Hello, my name is Scott Davis. Welcome to New World Birth. This is the weekly neutrino forecast for August 30th to September 5th of 2015. And on August 30th, we've got the sun. You can see denoted right here by this black circle with the dot in it. It's in Virgo, but it's also in the 40th hexagram. On the outside of the wheel, we've got the chop mark for the 40th, numbered from bottom to top. The 40th goes yin, yang, yin, yang, yin, yin. And then the 40th hexagram is mapped to an opening in an energy channel called a gate. Right here is the 40th gate of aloneness, deliverance, the point of transition between struggle and liberation, located in the heart center in a tribal energy path in the ego circuit called the channel, a community, a design of a part seeking a whole that connects to its harmonic and polarity, the 37th gate of friendship, the family, the manifestation, micro and macrocosmically of the organic nature of communities. And I found human design to be amazingly accurate in describing the person, that I use it as my primary tool when I provide readings. And we've got the following activated gates on the 30th. We've got the sun in the 40th gate with the earth in the 37th gate. The north node is in the 46th gate. The south node is in the 25th gate. Mercury is in the 46th gate along with the north node. Venus is retrograde in the 7th gate along with Mars is in the 7th gate. Jupiter is in the 59th gate. Saturn is in the 14th gate. Uranus is retrograde in the 51st gate. Neptune is retrograde in the 37th gate. And Pluto is retrograde in the 38th gate. So obviously not every gate activation forms a channel, but this information can be very helpful if you know your own human design chart, because some of these transits will form channels with potentials in your personal body graph. And the neutrino forecast is really just a weather report. No matter what the weather, your individual strategy and authority is the correct choice to have an authentic experience regardless of the program. As Ra Uru said, whatever the weather is going to be, you have your neutrino umbrella. As long as you're experimenting with your strategy and authority, the weather is for your pleasure. And as we begin the week, we've got two channel definitions due to the transit field, with the south node in the 25th gate and Uranus in the 51st gate. We've got the channel of initiation, a design of needing to be first, until November 29th, where we might experience some leap into the unknown. This is an individual channel that empowers through the courage to take a chance on something unknown and deal with the consequences afterwards. Obviously, following your strategy and authority will help you determine if this initiation is correct for you, or if faced with multiple possibilities to experience a quantum shift, which ones, if any, are correct for you. In the mundane world, we're likely to see people become more competitive, pushing the boundaries, getting outside of their comfort zone, which will be shocking to themselves and others as they feel the wonder of their own unique spirit. If you experience people acting unpredictable during this time period, just recognize that this is a conditioning force that will eventually move on, but this could seem that folks are less in balance while experiencing this foreign energetic. And with the defined ego center, this transit could affect, this definition could affect folks who, without a defined heart center, to feel as if they have something to prove or make commitments that are not correct for them. And then the defined G center could affect those without, to obsess about where they're headed and where they might find love. And then as individual circuitry, this also brings this quality of melancholy or blue feelings that are best used channeled into some type of creative activity. Because Uranus turned retrograde in the 51st gate in the 6th line on July 26th, this channel of shock initiation it will be with us for the entire time that the nodes are in the 25-46 axis. And then with the sun in the 40th gate and the earth and Neptune in the 37th gate, We've got the channel of community until September 4th. This definition brings the energy where people will wonder where they belong in the scheme of things and try to live that out. It's a time of thinking about marriage and family as the foundation of community. Fairness sometimes is more important under the influence of the fairness becomes more important under the influence of the channel of community. Balance also becomes important in all aspects of life. People will explore how they fit into their community and on a mystical level where they fit into the universe and what their true purpose is. We mentioned that the defined ego center could influence people to feel like they have something to prove or make promises or commitments that are not correct for you. The defined solar plexus could, for those without a defined emotional definition, this channel brings that unfamiliar wave of emotions, which perhaps could lead to acting confrontational. We're going to be looking at the sun's Ravi-Ching line values daily because 70% of the neutrinos we receive come from the sun. And as Ross said in Living with the Program, The Lines of the Day, when he talked about these daily shifts of line values, he said we can always take advantage of the themes of the day. Now, obviously, if your strategy and authority doesn't lead you in that direction, you can always notice how the program is affecting others in your environment. So let's get started. August 30th begins with the sun in the first line of the 40, the investigative line. This line is recuperation. The sun's exalted here. So we have exalted the ability to relax and enjoy the fruits of one's behavior, the ego strength to enjoy being alone. And in the investigative line, this is about having a fear or anxiety that needs to be researched and find information. The first, second, third lines, this is lower trigram. This brings more of a focus on being absorbed in your own process, looking more inward, things of that nature. Later on the 30th, the sun then moves out of the investigative line into the hermit line of the 40 at 5:58 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun is also exalted in the second line of the 40 and described as resoluteness, exalted the power and authority in deliverance to shed forever the qualities that hamper liberation, the power through aloneness to recognize the importance and the potential disruptive effect on others. And second line days, everybody's waiting for something. They're waiting to be called, particularly called for their natural talents. People are stuck in their own trip and so it's not a great day to have a party or a big social event because no one really is going to want to come. But then also on the 30th, Mercury moves out of the 46, leaving the North Node behind, and it moves into the 18th gate over here in the splenic center. And with Mercury in the 18th gate, let's talk about Mercury first. In mythology, Mercury was the messenger of the gods. So this is about communication. And Ra talked about it being about communication, not just as words, but also through music. What do we communicate in life? Well, we communicate the message of our design Mercury through the medium of our personality Mercury. And what might we hear communicated while Mercury is in the 18th gate? Well, we might hear people talking about authority being questioned. This is the gate of correction, work on what has been spoiled, the vigilance and determination to uphold and defend the basic and fundamental human rights. And Mercury in the first line of the 18 is conservatism, the adherence to traditional patterns despite and or in spite of changing circumstances, exalted gradual modification to avoid eventual upheaval, the potential to correct through gradual modification, detriment the patriarch whose rigidity guarantees deterioration, the potential to refuse to correct. And then on the 31st, the sun then moves up into the third line. So it moves into the martyr line of the 40. This shift happening at 4:15 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the 40th gate, third line, is humility, a calculated mode in deliverance to avoid attracting the attention of negative forces. Exalted, the subtlety to enjoy deliverance without the attentive, without having to flaunt it. The capacity of the ego to avoid negative forces, even if it means being alone. Detrimented, the ego arrogance that demands attention and gets it. The capacity of the ego to demand attention. And third line days, this is the martyr. So this is about trial and error process, bonds made and broken, a system of discovery by figuring out what doesn't work. Things bump into us under that third line energetic. So be careful on the roads, be careful of swinging doors, people swinging elbows. It's a day where we might have bonds made and broken. It's a day that's good for material things and working on the material plane. So it could be good for business. But of course, we also have to be careful because things can go wrong. But ultimately, those things could lead to discovery. On September 1st, the sun then moves into the fourth line of the 40th hexagram at 3:31 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the 40th gate, fourth line, is described as organization. Exalted, the power to transform and the intuitive intellect to select and organize for the purpose of maintaining deliverance. The power of the ego when organized and active to maintain separateness. Detrimented, an uncontrollable zeal that ignores the quality which in the long run may destabilize deliverance. The empowering of the ego through the capacity to organize others. Fourth line days, this is where we move out from the lower trigram into the upper trigram so that we have a shift of moving from the lower trigrams more inward looking perspective to the outward, the upper trigram where people are looking more outward with the themes of friendship and companionship, networking. Fourth line days are great for social interactions. And then on the second, the sun then moves up into the fifth line, the heretical line of the 40th hexagram at 2:47 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun is detrimented in the fifth line of the 40 due to the earth being in the 37. And is described as rigidity, the recognition that to achieve liberation, all negative forces must be rejected. Detrimented, a tendency in revolution to accept a certain amount of necessary deviation on the assumption that it can be successfully purged later. The weakness of the ego in its loneliness to maintain and not reject negative relationships. Fifth line days, the heretic line, this is really about projection, and the projection goes from positive to negative. Positive, they could do it, they'd be great at it, the perfect person for whatever the expectation is. Then later, if the person doesn't meet that expectation, they can't do it, they don't want to do it, for whatever reason that expectation is not met, then the projection turns negative. The person gets punished. The heretic gets tied to the stake, as it were. The fifth line day is a day where there's suspicion, but also universalization, where something can leak out like a virus, whether it's a YouTube video or a Facebook post that maybe gets a lot of attention. They say paranoia is associated with the fifth line day. As I've said before, if they're projecting on you and out to punish you because you're not meeting that expectation, then it really isn't paranoia, is it? So suspicion, projection, seduction, these are all fifth line days that obviously can impact the nature of relationships. And then on the 3rd, the sun then moves up into the 6th line, leaving the heretic line into the role model line of the 40th hexagram at 2:02 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The sun is exalted in the 40th hexagram 6th line, but also detrimented due to the Earth being in the 37. So, when we look at a chart, an exaltation is an upward pointing triangle. The detriment is a downward pointing triangle. So when we look at the sun in the 46, what we're going to see is the two triangles overlap. So they look like a 6-pointed star. And the sun in the 6th line of the 40th hexagram is decapitation, the necessary destruction of inferior forces in positions of power before liberation can take place. Exalted, the authority coupled with the magnanimity to remove from power only those which deserve such drastic treatment. The power and authority of the ego to eject individuals in legitimate defense of the group. Detrimented, exemplified by the terror of the French Revolution, where the idea of who was deserving of punishment was cruelly extended to an entire class. The distortion of the ego through power and authority. And 6 line days, Ra talked about not getting stuck with your head in the clouds, because we're up here, we're on the roof of the hexagram. And when I think about being on the roof of a building, we don't tend to be looking at the building so much as what's beyond the building, what's going on in the neighborhood, what's down the road, what's on the horizon. So this is really the energetic of that 6th line of where there's maybe a real lack of focus on what's going on around you, because folks are looking beyond their immediate environment. And like a 3rd line day, there's certain dangers of not seeing a car coming, perhaps not seeing a bill coming. On the 4th, the sun then moves out of the 40th hexagram. So this definition goes away, and the sun moves up into the 64th gate in hexagram. The Earth also moves, and it moves out of the 37. It's leaving Neptune behind, and it moves into the 63rd gate in hexagram. So we've got the sun well, let's start with the Earth. The Earth in the 63rd hexagram. This is in the gate of doubt after completion in the spiral of life. All endings are beginnings. This shift happens at 1:16 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we've got the sun in the 64th gate of conditions, exalted in 64th hexagram. So this is the gate of confusion before completion. Transition, like birth, requires a determined strength for the passage through. The sun in the 1st line, the investigative line of the 64, this is the line of conditions, exalted in penetrating to the center, the understanding that instills the necessary harmony to survive disorder. Amongst confusion, the difficulty in finding the point. Detrimented, the powerful temptation when having transition in sight to hasty actions, the urge to act when you think you have made sense of confusion. And again, so now we're in a new hexagram, so we're moving back into the lower trigram. So this brings more of a focus inward. People are absorbed in more in their own process. With the 1st line, the investigator line, of having a fear or an anxiety that needs to be investigated. So it brings the energy to study, not to act, a day to look into things, not to jump. It's a good day to deal with things you don't understand. can't make sense of, or don't know. And then on the 5th, the sun then moves into the second line of the 64 at 12:29 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So just 29 minutes after midnight Eastern Daylight Time. The sun in the second line, the hermit line of the 64, is described as qualifications, exalted, the inner development, which recognizes what qualities are essential for transcendence, and the awareness that without them, action will fail. Inner development that can end confusion over what makes sense. Detrimented constantly in action, it wastes the very qualities and resources that it will need. Getting lost in the confusion and the burdening burdening the psyche. Second line days, as we mentioned before, people are waiting for something, waiting to be called for their natural talents. So again, the hermit energy, people are more inclined to stay home rather than go out and be social. Then later on the 5th, the sun then moves into the third line, into the martyr line of the 64th hexagram, and this happens at 11:42 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So this is at just 18 minutes before midnight on the 5th. And the sun in the third line of the 64 is overextension, exalted, the wisdom to recognize when one has not the necessary resources to complete transition. Such timely awareness may give it a chance to seek assistance. The wisdom to accept confusion as a temporary state that will be resolved in time or through others. Detrimented, the risk of a superficially confident personality that when transition collapses, there is no one to turn to. Overconfidence that the fates will be kind on demand. And again, third line days, we're talking about the martyr with this trial and error process, bonds made and broken, and a system of discovery by figuring out what doesn't work. Also on the 5th, Mercury moves from the 18 to the 48. And we talked about Mercury earlier about being about communication. So what might it be communicated when we've got Mercury in the 48th gate, the well? The depth that comes from understanding the patterns that resulted when Mercury was in the judgment process, when it was in the 18th gate. So this is the gate of depth, the well, the necessary qualitative foundation that is a prerequisite to establishing the common good. Mercury in the first line of the 48 is in significance, exalted, the instinctive recognition of what is practical and deserves attention, a taste for recognition that is practical and deserves attention. Detrimented an ego tendency to apply energy to trivial considerations, a taste for trivia. No matter what the energies that are conditioning you during the week, just remember this experience is about being a passenger riding in a vehicle that's being driven by the magnetic monopole. So just enjoy the scenery and let the vehicle take you where you need to go through using your strategy and authority. Every day is a blessing, no matter what the dramas that beckon to distract us. We're all here just giving the performance of a lifetime on this world stage. Just take some time to observe your play, watch your movie, as well as act your part. Remember, you're a spiritual being that's having a human experience. I want to thank you for checking out New World Birth. The next segment of the Neutrino Forecast, the weekly Neutrino Forecast, will be on September 6th. It should be available on the 5th, when we'll continue to look at the influence of the heavenly bodies as they transit the sky and the hexagrams of the I Ching. You can check us out on Facebook, Blogger, or YouTube, and I encourage you to share this information as videos or as text as widely as you choose. I invite you to contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com if you've got any questions, or if you wish to schedule a reading. And if you've been thinking about getting a reading, please contact me, as I would love to provide you a reading during these uncertain times. You'll need to be able to either call me in Maine in the USA, or we can connect with Skype to receive your reading. We're also accepting donations to keep these reports freely available. And again, contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com. I'll let you know how to make a donation or get a reading. These readings tend to be quite extensive, going at least 2 hours, often 3, sometimes 4. What can I say? Projector. Don't know when enough is enough. But full of information about you and how to navigate what you may be experiencing currently. So as always, I'm blessed that you've taken the time to connect with my passion for all these ancient mysteries and their application to our journey during this incarnation. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste, in Lakesh. And as Ra would say, love yourself. Thank you very much, and look forward to connecting with you next week in the next video, or perhaps in a reading, or send me an email if you've got a question or wish to make a donation. All my best to everyone.